RJ, for the first time this season on Emerald City Hockey Postgame Live, we have to talk about the Kraken being on a 5-game losing streak. Prior to this, the Kraken had done a good job under Dan Bylsma of kind of, finding ways to rebound after hitting some lulls. There's been some really bad stretches of hockey for them, but they've always found a way of kind of putting their, foot down or their skate on in the ice. Not really a good comp there for this sport, but being able to bounce back from that, being able to kind of, hit that, like, feel rock bottom and then be able to push off and find a way to go out there and at least pick up one win and keep it from really kind of getting it to this point. But we are here, and it didn't exactly look good either.
No, and the Kraken desperately needed something, anything to build off of going into this Christmas break, and they really don't have a lot. I thought there were some positives from this game, but as Allison Lucan said at the start of the Kraken post-game show, we're past the time for moral victories. Mm-hmm. The Kraken needed 2 points here, and they simply don't get it. And as much as I want to look at the things like Capo Caco looking a lot better, right? Yeah. I mean, some of the lines were gelling. They had some positives in this game. At the end of the day, we have to face the reality that the Kraken, I mean, it looks like they may very well be out of playoff conversation by Christmas. And for a team that went and spent to the cap and that was looking to play at least meaningful games in April, it's jarring and it's kind of alarming. I mean, you look at the reality, right? The Kraken are going to be, I think they're still 7 points back of a playoff spot, but depending on how the games go tomorrow, it's probably more likely going to be 8. And I went and looked it up last night. There are only 2 teams in the salary cap era that have been 8 points out or more on Christmas and have gone on to actually make the playoffs. It's the 08-09 Sabres, the 07-08 Capitals. No team's done it since 2009. These are the long odds the Kraken are facing right now. And so it's hard for me to even look at the details of a game like this, given that that's the overall situation.
No, I think I'm right there with you. It seemed like, at least being on Discord, that's kind of where everybody was at, that, we can notice the good things, the young players picking up some points tonight. Shane Wright, Matty Beniers, Capo Caco looking like himself in this one. Some great defensive plays from him, net front presence. But at the end of the day, I think really this Christmas break, and I know I'm planning anyway on talking about this tomorrow on the deep dive, a lot of what's going on right now, and I think we'll do some of this post game, is that kind of mental reset around this team is not going to be competitive late into the season. This is not going to be a team fighting for a playoff spot. This is going to be a team that, unfortunately, and I already see it in chat, right? We're going to have to be pulling up Tankathon again and looking at their odds in that regard, rather than looking at their odds to make the playoffs or potentially go further. And I think this Christmas break is, as much as it's going to be a good reset opportunity for the Kraken, and hopefully they can come out and play more competitively afterwards, I think it's also unfortunately going to be kind of like a mental reset period for the fan base, where we kind of all have to kind of come around to this idea, accept it, and then decide what is it we want to be rooting for the rest of the way. Is it for good performances from the young guys and their continued development? Are you somebody who wants to get on board with the tanking? Kind of where do you fall within everything? And that's a personal choice for everybody. But it does feel like that's really what Kraken fans are going to have to use this, break for, rather than looking ahead to, okay, how can we, build off of this strong start to a season? We're almost at the halfway point. Where are we at? All of those kind of wishes and hopes that we had for this group just have not come together, is the bottom line.
Exactly. And I mean, really, we haven't felt this kind of thing this early, right? Since maybe even year one.
Yeah.
I mean, even last year, right? Around New Year's, you had the Winter Classic, you had that 9-game win streak, you had that great run, and it felt like they were back. This year, it's just somehow is worse than that.
Yeah, it is. We got to take a moment real quick to thank our wonderful sponsor, Queen Anne Beer Hall, for sponsoring the post-game live. Reminder, it's not their fault.
No, it is not.
That should be the slogan for all of it, right? No, I'm excited. My dad got into town today. We're playing each other in a very close fantasy matchup for the right to go to a championship game. I would have loved to be there watching tonight's game. It's very important for us at the beer hall with him, but maybe tomorrow night for Monday night. I think that would be a lot of fun. First time seeing him since I moved up here. So looking to work the beer hall into some good family time there this holiday season.
Yep. If anything's going to get you over the hump, because I think you probably are not projected to win at the moment, but I bet the beer hall and the good vibes could do it.
Oh, thanks for that spoiler there, RJ. No, it's fine. Going to start off in chat here with the super chats. Evan, first one up. All I want for Christmas is to never pull a goalie again. Pretty sure we're 1 for 50 on the poll. Kiviranta gave us some coal. Happy holidays. Kiviranta, RJ, probably wishes every day he could wake up and just go out and play the Seattle Kraken.
I know it is wild, and I had to delete the tweet and repost it after the third goal for Kiviranta. And I see Rebecca asking, RJ, do you have any more Kiviranta stats to torture us with? No, just that one. Yeah, over 17% of Joel Kiviranta's career goals in his 255 game NHL career have come against the Seattle Kraken this season. He had 2 goals earlier this year in a game, and then 3 goals tonight. It's just crazy. I mean, look, the stats nerd in me loves that. I just think it's so fun. And if somebody has to be a weird Kraken killer, I'm kind of glad it's him. I like Finns, whatever. But yeah, it was rough watching that all happen.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely rough, especially because, you walk into a game against the Colorado Avalanche, you're prepared for a Nathan McKinnon or a Cale Makar or a Mikko Rantanen to go out there and do their thing, right? Like you kind of almost mentally prepare for like they're going to get 1, maybe 2 those guys because they're just that good and they are that hard to stop. And then when Kiviranta comes out and gets a hat trick, you're just like, what? That's not what I was ready for. As for pulling the goalie. Brutal two pulls there for Joey. Just the moment he gets off the ice, immediate turnovers, and the Avs are able to get it up the ice. Again, statistically, you should still do it, but it is one of those kind of just feels bad moments.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't work way more often than it works, but you're in a desperate situation anyway. It does increase the odds slightly.
It works enough is the bottom line. Duthan here with the super chat. Thank you very much, Duthan. Hey, who's ready for some Berkeley Catton World Junior Championship action? I definitely am, RJ. I'm super stoked to see him at that tournament.
Yeah, I think we could all use some fun World Juniors. What does it start? When does it
day
start?
After?
Day after Christmas on the 26th. So it's something that we can watch even before the next Kraken game and just kind of refresh our minds and think about the future, which I think will probably benefit us all.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to see how Canada is going to deploy him. They've kind of messed around with some different looks so far. Excited to see kind of how much, kind of take charge attitude he has for that tournament as well. Canada's got some young guys on that roster. If he ends up playing with them, how can he lead them? I think that's going to be something interesting to watch. And then obviously just seeing how he performs against competition that's maybe a little bit better than what he's used to facing on a nightly basis in the dub. Yeah. Schultz here with the super chat. Kraken have got a week to decide what they want to be. Need to see a refreshed team after the break. Too many mistakes, completely out of sync. And that has really been the story of these last 2 games, RJ, has just been, they just mentally don't really seem like they're in the present or in the moment out there on the ice. We're seeing a lot of mental mistakes. I mean, you give Colorado 3 power plays in the first 12 minutes of this game. It's just a lot of kind of mental mistakes, guys blowing a tire, guys missing an assignment here or there. And when you're playing teams like Vegas or Colorado, they're going to capitalize on that.
And even the type of things that they had excelled at in the past, like staying out of the box and being on the plus side of the penalty differential, kind of got sloppy again tonight. And I do think the team, Dan Bilesman talked about playing connected, right? Being connected with each other, making those passes. And especially early on in this game, you could see the difference between a team whose passing was in sync and a team whose passing was just completely off the mark, between Colorado and the Kraken, right? It's just that they're disjointed. They don't seem focused. And hopefully, as you say, Schultz, the break can kind of refresh them and just give them a clean slate, because that's ultimately what they need. We'll see if they've done enough damage already to the point where it won't matter or not, but that's what they absolutely need. I think they should all just go on their vacations. Don't think about hockey at all for several days and just come back and kind of flush it all.
Yeah, I agree with that. Light with the super chat. Shane was 16-17 tonight, more than Maddie, though I thought both had good games. I do think they both kind of had good games. It is odd to me that Shane got more ice time in this one, RJ, because I thought that Matty Beniers line looked fantastic. Matty with Capo Caco and Jaden Schwartz. I mean, that line was a force to be reckoned with out there. And the underlying numbers back that up too. Huge expected goal share for them.
Yeah, absolutely. They looked great. And I think Capo Caco, something started to kind of gel with him, right? I think the chemistry
Yeah.
with him and Maddie started. I think Jaden Schwartz was a big part of that. You even hinted at it on the last post game that that's something, a change that you would make because Jaden Schwartz was
Mhm.
with Maddie and that was really working. And I think Schwartz just brought every element of that line together. You kind of have the net front guy. You've got a little bit more physicality. Schwartz, who will go to the dirty areas, and then Kako, who will go to the dirty areas and muck it up and has the size to do it. And I think if you just give Maddie a couple guys who will do that sort of thing, it also gave me some hope really for the long-term future for Maddie that look, Jaden Schwartz, he does things other players on the team don't really do. Same with Capo Kako. But if you can actually get, through the offseason, right, make moves to
Mhm.
just get more than two of those guys on the team, you could really elevate Maddie's potential, I think.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that that would be a big thing. Again, Matty is a guy, he needs a forechecker and then he needs a net front presence, right? This line gives him that, and they were able to go out there and take advantage of the matchups that they got. Shane Wright playing with Yanni Gord and Jared McCann getting that elevated ice time, right? Over 15 minutes for you, RJ. Shane
Of
Wright
course, it
did
was
it.
exactly 16-17, which ties but does not exceed his previous career high.
Of course, of course. Couldn't do
That's
that.
the limit, apparently. We found the limit.
What I did like about that line combination around Shane Wright, though, is really all on display for the goal that Jared McCann scores, where you have Shane finally kind of playing with some more north-south players, right? And kind of thinking about the ice in a little bit of a different way. As great as Shane plays with Ellie Tolvanen and Oliver Bjorkstrand, and as great as that combination can be with Tolvanen going in on the forecheck, freeing up loose pucks for a Shane Wright or a Oliver Bjorkstrand to pick up and then throw to the slot. Him playing with Yanni Gordon, Jared McCann, watching them kind of play in this game, RJ, I really kind of it brought back a lot of memories of Shane Wright in junior, kind of before he was drafted, playing in Kingston, where he was kind of more of a north-south player. And he was a player who could come into the zone and then make a skill play and make that sweet pass over to somebody or get himself open so that an off the rush chance is going to find him. A lot of the stuff that we haven't really seen from him at the NHL level, as he's been trying to play more responsibly, more team focused in this one. And that goal they score, like I said, it perfectly encapsulates this. It's like a give and go with Yanni Gord. He's protecting the puck. He even makes like a fake, like he's going to go to the middle, drops the puck back for Yanni Gord. It's beautiful. It totally captures the defender there. Defender then whirls around, goes after Yanni. Shane is still part of the play, right? Like Shane isn't going to go set up in a corner and wait for something, whatever. Shane's still very much part of that play, picks it up, and then he immediately looks to the center of the ice to kind of be the playmaker, be the distributor, outweights the defender, and makes it happen. I am curious now to see Shane Wright play with more, skilled line mates, guys that are going to be capable of finding open areas for him to distribute to. And this felt like the first time he was aggressive as a puck carrier in the way the Kraken wanted him to.
And I hope that's what Dan Bylsma is looking to see. And I hope the ice time is an indicator of that, right? That Bylsma likes what he sees out of Shane's game and wants to give him just that little bit more. Actually, I'm looking at it 5-on-5. Shane had the second most ice time of any Kraken forward at 5-on-5, only 11 seconds behind Oliver Bjorkstrand. That's telling. I love
Yeah.
that. That indication from the coach that he's willing to put Shane out there for that much time. Give me more of that.
And do you think there's an element of that is also message sending to the veteran group? Or do you think
I would
it just
hope
worked
so.
out that way? I would hope so too.
I think it just worked out that way. Probably maybe that's the kind of cynicism with that stuff that I get from watching 3 years of a Hackstall coach team. But I hope there is a message to the veteran group because they need a message sent.
Mm-hmm. I will say Shane Wright did have less shifts than Maddie. If that means anything there.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see
Maybe
as
that
they
means
move
longer
forward. And
shifts.
after
Maybe that means he wasn't taking himself off early like he had.
right. Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see coming out of the break, kind of where they're at with all that. JTB Hockey here with the super chat. I love this team through thick and thin, but it is frustrating. They are just not getting it done, coaches included. Is it time for drastic moves, RJ?
Well, as far as drastic moves, you look at drastic moves that could potentially be made. I mean, really, you already made 2 trades to try and get this team going, and neither of them really moved the needle from a whole team perspective. Kako looked good tonight, but the team didn't get the message. As far as drastic moves, you could make a bigger trade and one that would involve selling off a player like a Yanni Gorda, Brandon Tanev. that certainly doesn't help you this season, I think, right? So I don't know what the point of that would be right now. I mean, you could get rid of the coach, but I don't think there's much point to that. He's a first year coach, right? You can't do that. Getting rid of the GM would be the most drastic move you could make. And maybe that's a discussion to like more of a deep dive type discussion where, okay, if you accept they're not going to make the playoffs, what do you do? But I don't know that there are any more buttons that you can press with this team. This group just has to figure it out.
That's what I was thinking too, right? Like I don't realistically know what you could do that would make any sort of sense or give you a chance to, not necessarily make the playoffs, but at least turn things around this season, be a competitive club, go out there playing all the games close and kind of give fans what they want to see, right? Be that entertaining and good team. I don't really think that there's one of those moves for them to make because I'm with you, right? The obvious thing would be to make it some sort of big trade. You're not really in a position to sell off a ton of stuff to bring in a big fish. You really can't fit them under the cap anyway. So that's off the table. If you sell off Yanni Gourde, that doesn't make your team better this year at all, right? Brandon Tanev got the same thing. So I really don't know what drastic move they could make. I think their hands more or less are tied for the rest of this season. That then becomes more of an off-season question where, you're looking at buyouts of potential guys. You're looking at maybe making a change in the front office. You're looking at those kind of more wholesale sweeping changes. But mid-season right now, just given the way the Kraken are constructed, I just don't think it's there. Chuck here with the next super chat. Appreciate this, Chuck. Why is Maddie elite defender not on the penalty kill? Thank you guys for being there after each game for analysis and group therapy. You're very welcome, Chuck. I've been asking this question, RJ, since basically year 2 of the Seattle Kraken. When do we see Maddie Beniers on the PK? I thought maybe we'd see a little bit of it today, just given the way so many guys had to be out there to kill all those penalties off in quick succession at the start. And because Edzo talked about it on last night's broadcast, I really thought that might trigger something. Did not.
Yeah, the Edzo thing gave me hope because usually when he makes a talking point like that, at least people in the organization are listening. They know what he thinks and what he has to say. Not that they're necessarily going to take his advice, but it's on people's minds at that point. I don't know. I would love to see it. I'd love to see him there instead of Chandler Stevenson. That's kind of the change that I would make. I don't know why we haven't seen it yet. That's one of those things that if you ever do kind of reach that point in the season where you say, okay, this is not our year, let's shift to looking forward. I want to see Matty Beniers on the PK.
Yeah, I do too. CJ, just want to wish Dylan, RJ, and the ECH community happy holidays and just glad we have this format to share our thoughts, no matter our current disappointment with the team. Well, you're very welcome, CJ, and appreciate that. Happy holidays to you and yours as well.
Yeah, thank you, CJ. Happy holidays. Really appreciate that. It is nice still to have this format and everything too, to just be able to talk it out. I think we all need some Emerald City therapy tonight.
Yeah, especially on these, right? We get to bounce ideas off of each other and everything. It's a lot of fun. That's Kevin. And so we need that Carolina versus Kraken vibe again. Boy, doesn't that feel like an eternity ago?
It does. And remember, we were talking about, the season is saved. They figured it out. They're playing the right way again. And it really went for a few games too. I don't know what happened to it.
It's just gone. Unfortunately, hopefully they can find some of that over the break. We'll see.
It was a 6-game stretch too. I'm looking at the schedule. Like it was 6 solid games.
It was good. Yeah. It was up to the Tampa game.
Yeah.
Carolina to Tampa. Yeah. And then Amanda here with the super chat. Not sure if you two are going to the Battle of the Sound, but I'd love a post-game live for that game. Just an idea. If not for 2024, maybe in the future. Happy holidays. All happy holidays. Amanda, my attendance to the Battle of the Sound, because I would love to go, it's very much like dictated on my health at the time. I've been kind of like waiting to see if I'm going to be good enough to go, and I still just don't know.
Yeah, and I'm hoping you'll be able to go and good enough to go. That would be nice. I haven't
been able to go to one yet. All right, I finally move up here. Like this is the idea, and then of course I have to be all banged up, but I would love to go, and if I do go, I don't know that we'll do a post-game live, but I'll definitely make sure to get thoughts out about everything.
Yeah, for sure. I know that the takeaways will be there for sure.
Yeah. All right. Hopping on over, RJ. See, nice casual 93 chats to catch up on here. No big deal. Though I do want to thank everybody for the super chats. Really appreciate it. Maddie kicking it off on chats. Will we ever win again? I think a lot of averages say yes.
Yeah, bold prediction. Yes,
Yeah.
I think at some point.
Yep. And CJ Tankathon has the Kraken picking 6th currently. Who are we thinking there? Anton from Dell. I do feel like there is a top 5, maybe 6. So,
and also, actually, it was 6 before this game. They're now up to number 5. So,
all right, even better.
I don't know if that makes us feel any better, but
get a choice.
Top 5. Let's go.
I think that's kind of maybe what to root for. I don't know. Virginia, don't know. Maybe if we stop all these face-off violations, lol. I knew somebody was going to bring it up.
Yep. No, I knew it was coming. All right. So if you were watching the broadcast on Kraken Hockey Network, I'm sure you heard plenty about face-off violations and the Avalanche, maybe not putting their stick down in time in the offensive zone. Do you want to start on this, Dylan, or should I?
Look, I like that Edzo talks about rules like that. I think he does a great job of explaining things. I think him and this Kraken Hockey Network video crew work really well together to be able to display all this stuff in a way that I think both new and experienced fans can enjoy together. What I think sometimes where he crosses the line is when he really, latches on to one specific issue. And I also think it's always a little like weird for me when the issue is something that happens every single game by both teams several times. The way the refs are really calling that, like we see it all the time. And so it's either kind of show it on both sides and just like make people aware, like this is what's going on. Hey, when you see them like kind of kick somebody out of the faceoff dot and somebody else comes in, that's what's happening here. But it wasn't that. It was very much just targeted to, basically calling out the linesmen for letting Colorado continue to get away with faceoff violations that go watch a hockey game. Everybody's getting away with.
Right. To harp on it to that extent. And for football fans out there, I would compare it to holding. If you watch in the trenches, the offensive and defensive lines, holding happens many, many times a game. Sometimes it's called the egregious one. Sometimes it's not. But basically, if you're not, I think if you're not holding, you're not trying. If you're not cheating in the face-off dot, you're not trying. You're not doing it right. And there's a reason guys get kicked out of the draw too. We see it many times in the game where guys are cheating in on the face-off dot. They can't call it all the time, but it's a common occurrence. I like, as you said, that Edzo explains the rules and that he's talking about it. But to just belabor that point, and even it past the intermission break too, to come back to that, the first thing, especially in a game where, look, the Kraken are not playing their best game, right? This is not the reason they're losing. There are so many plays you could break down, things you could talk about that are reasons that the Kraken are not winning this game. I don't know why you picked that.
Yeah, and they were only down by 1 too, right? And they were coming into a third. It's close game. You're going into the third period. It felt like there was, other ways of kind of putting out maybe a better vibe. Out into the universe, see if that helps something, right? So yeah, that it was a decision. Terrible Lotus, must we always pull the goalie, especially when only down by 1? The end ruined the experience for me. It can feel like piling on, especially when it's multiple goals scored on the empty net, or somebody gets a hat trick because of it. RJ, but yes, it is one of those things where if you have the 6th attacker out there, it does, if you're in the offensive zone, it does give you that much more to work with. In theory, that means somebody is going to be uncovered somewhere. It allows you to try to run a play in which you can get them a little bit of time and space to take a good shot and get that tying goal for you. Because the bottom line is, if you're going to lose anyway, it doesn't matter if you lose by 1, 2, 3, like goal differential doesn't matter for anything in the standings. You might as well give yourself the best chance of tying the game every time you can.
Right. Exactly. That's the important thing, right? Is that you get what points you can, and it doesn't matter if you lose by extra goals. The small percentage of times where it does work out is worth giving up those extra goals, at least standings wise. It might feel worse to give up those extra goals, but it is worth it. The numbers do bear that out. In fact, actually, the analytics say that you should pull your goalie much earlier, much more
Yeah.
aggressively than any team actually does. That you can go a surprisingly long amount of time without getting scored on. Usually, this game was an exception, but even this season, we've seen the Kraken go 4 or 5 minutes
Yeah.
pulling the goalie without getting scored on and even score a bit themselves.
Yeah. So it is one of those that, when your team does it, you just kind of got to get yourself in the mindset of like, maybe I see something here, but really the game's over.
I keep wanting to make football analogies, but you're lined up for a Hail Mary, right? You think this
Yeah.
probably isn't going to work, but if it does, the chance that it
Got
does
it.
is better than taking a knee.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Got to try. Tough result, but a big old yeehaw for Kako's first goal. Plus Shane and Maddie both getting an assist there from Coop. I mean, Capo Kako, what a great way to pick up your first goal. And I love that he just like kind of tried that, just went for it. Like the Kraken do need more of that kind of just, YOLO, like, hey, I see something, let me go for it.
Yeah, I love that opportunistic sense, right? Just, I'm going to throw the puck at the net and catch the goalie unaware. Those are some of my favorite goals, when you just throw the puck on net and the goalie's not even paying attention, because goalies hate that too. Like Blackwood, I'm sure, was just kicking himself after that one, because goalies, their job is to always be ready once that puck is dropped. And so that's kind of a fun one as a skater as well. You feel like you might be getting in the goalie's head a little bit. Love that from him. I love so many of the things that Capo Caco was doing in this game.
Yeah, no, he was fantastic. The defensive zone, I think, was also incredible. The way he was either able to tie up Colorado players and then force the puck up and out of the zone for a clear, or the intercepted passes that he had. He had that beautiful intercepted pass that then he was able to spring Jaden Schwartz on that breakaway. I think that was early in the third period when that happened. I mean, just fantastic stuff from Capo Caco in this game. It felt like for the first time we were actually seeing Capo Caco play, rather than, somebody who's just getting used to a team. So,
and go figure, he still hasn't practiced with the team yet. Maybe it does take a few days to get acquainted and everything.
Exactly. Let's see. Rogue Wave Creative, feel for you all. Talented in the long term wins games. They lack that very thing. When they play perfect, they win, but no one can keep that up. Thanks for all you do. I mean, they have talent. I feel like it's just the consistency of those talented guys. And I will say this, at the highest level of any sport, I feel like that's kind of, the thing, right? Like you have to have talent to get to this level, right? They are talented, more talented than 99.9% of all other hockey players on the face of this planet. It's just, how consistent can you be with that talent? How much can you go out there and really take control of things? Or in a game like this, you don't even really need to go out there and make it like a one-man show and take it all upon yourself. Just little things that they could be working on, RJ. And I know they're capable of this, but Colorado gets like 4 power plays before you get your first one. And I know people were talking about that in the Discord and everything. Bottom line is Kraken weren't doing anything to earn a power play. Right? Go put yourself in a position where, you're coming in hard on the defender. You've got the puck and you're taking it to a dirty area. He's got to react to that. He's got to clutch and grab you. He's got to trip you. He's got to take you down in some way where you're going to then draw the penalty, right? I feel like there's so many times where the Kraken, they can play those little games within a game, and I feel like that's where they drop it sometimes.
Right. And the details, that is where you can beat a team that maybe is a little bit more talented. And we saw it on the penalty that Shane Wright drew, right? There wasn't a whole lot there, but you know what? He puts himself in a position where, okay, that's a dangerous chance. An Avs player, makes some contact on him, and the officials are willing to call it at that point. If it's something that looks like they're impeding you from a dangerous chance, they're going to put the arm up, especially if the penalty differential is what it was at that time. You have to go and earn it. The Kraken just weren't putting themselves in the position to do that.
Yeah, and so those are the things that, you could talk about them maybe being able to go out there and do, or that they don't do as well as other teams when we are seeing them play one of the top teams in the league. I mean, that is part of it. It isn't always just the talent gap. It can be some of that mindset stuff as well. Light with the super chat here. The only other positive I can draw is I really liked the effort in the third. They outplayed the Avs that whole period. Dan and the assistants seem to do something. I mean, this is what we've seen from this group, right? Like they are a team that does go out there in the third period and they do try. It's sometimes the only time in a game that they try. I wouldn't say that for this one, but that has been something that we've talked about in the past. But this team has recaptured that never say die attitude that last year's team completely lost.
Right. And this third period, yeah, they didn't give up. They were in it till the end, and the scoreline can be a little bit deceiving with the empty net goals and stuff, and the unfortunate goalie pulls and how that went. But the effort was there from the group. They were trying to get back in it. And that's another one where I feel like against some teams, maybe you do break through, right? You happen to be playing a very good Colorado Avalanche team who's finally figured out their goaltending situation. And it's things like this where I'm like, if you could just take that and even use it in, say, a Chicago game, right? Give that extra 10 minutes in a Chicago game. It probably makes the difference for you. And even if you can't get it done against Colorado, it's just about consistently giving that effort. Consistency. We talked about it on last post game. That's the thing.
Yeah, wherever they could find it. If anybody knows of anywhere that's selling consistency, please let the Seattle Kraken know. They could really use some. Amanda, the fact that Monty said he wished the team could stay more positive and upbeat says it's far past time to get a sports psychologist on staff. I think there's elements of that. I think every team should have one on staff personally. I just think that makes a lot of sense in today's day and age where athletes are going to, have social media all around them all the time, where so much is on the line, so much pressure is placed on them and their individual performances. I think it's a great idea for organizations to have people who are able to help them in that regard. So I'm with you, Amanda, beyond just the fact that the team is struggling right now or that the vibes aren't great. I think it's just a good idea for everyone, regardless of where they're at in the standings.
It is one of those innovations I think we will see pretty soon with a lot of teams. Maybe not in the NHL. I feel like hockey might be one of the sports that's kind of last to pick up on that stuff. But yeah, I think we will see it eventually.
Definitely. Let's see, Maddie. Kako is making me realize how small the Kraken really are. Do you think the size of this team really hurts us? I don't think it's always the size. I do think there's an element of it that's the size, but I think the fact that and maybe this is because they're smaller, RJ, the fact that you don't have a lot of guys that are willing to go and try to play net front or try to, go to the areas on the ice that you just kind of have to go to grind out a goal. I think that hurts you. And if they're not doing it because of their size, then yes, the size hurts you.
Right. And I think it's a chicken and the egg kind of thing, right? It's a willingness problem. You don't have to be big to go to those areas, but maybe the fact that you're on the smaller side, especially of the forwards, does that prevent you from being that type of player or from thinking that you can go to those areas or do it consistently? There's an element of it, yes. And the Kraken, it's not like they're in the middle of the league or something as far as the size of a forward group. I think by measures, height, weight, whatever formula you want to use, I think they're in the bottom 3 or 4 lightest, smallest forward groups in the NHL. So they really are at one extreme.
At least before bringing in Kako in, they were. Yeah. He probably does a lot to drastically raise that average.
And he's not like, look, he's big, he's solid, but he's not massive. Like, no.
So it is, yeah. But I'm with you, Matty. He's like noticeably bigger than anybody else out there on this team. Milo, really hope Joey's okay. That moment was super scary. It really was, RJ.
It looked a lot worse than I guess it ended up being, because that looked like it could have been a groin. I mean, he was kind of, hunching over his hand, but he was not moving right and I noticed it even before the stoppage too. After that little bump, he was not moving right in the crease. And I was just thinking, oh no, because this is the time of year we usually see, usually it's the annual Grubauer injury, but to have a goalie go down, it feels like we've seen this kind of thing before. And he is a player the Kraken absolutely cannot afford to lose.
Definitely. Jody Lou, do you think having the captain out is making that big of a difference?
I've thought about this question a bunch myself. It's one of those where I'm just lying in bed at night. Actually, last night even, I just couldn't get to sleep after the Vegas game. And I'm just thinking, like, does the Eberle thing really, is it that big a deal? Because it is one thing you can point to where this team did kind of have a different effort level, even when they didn't win, when he was there. My head says no. I don't think that if you keep Eberle on this team, as good as he was, as good of a leadership influence he was, that this would be prevented, because I think ultimately you do have the same skill imbalance that we see a lot, and that he was there last season as similar times, right, where the team would fall apart. I don't think, even though he had the C on his chest, that it would totally prevent this.
I think it makes a small difference, but not enough to overall change really where this team is at. Right? Like maybe we're having
better.
I was just going to say, maybe we're having this conversation a week or two from now rather than today, as far as resetting expectations and everything. But I don't think it's enough to honestly really change stuff. And also, if he was around, then you wouldn't see some of the experimenting that we've seen with the lineup, and some good things have come from that, like seeing Yanni Gourde on the wing with both Matty Beniers and Shane Wright, and what that can do for them. Making the trade for Capo Caco, I don't think probably happens for this group if Jordan Eberle's in the lineup. So I do think that there has been some good stuff to come out of, that, and it probably offsets some of the negative there. Rebecca RJ, apparently Kiviranta's family was visiting from Finland, watching him play in the NHL for the first time. If the Finnish vibes weren't strong enough for you yet.
Wow. Okay, that does make me happy. I'm sorry it had to happen against the Kraken and all that stuff, but I absolutely love that for Kiviranta. It makes a difference when you have your family in the building like that, especially if they can't always be there. And okay, I'll go off into a quick personal story here, because no, having Finns in the crowd is powerful. In my beer league, no, seriously, a couple of years ago on my beer league team, we were playing a game. We were down 2-10 in the game. It was bad. We were getting beaten pretty bad. One of our players, Ida, she's Finnish, and her family came to the game, and it's like aunts, uncles, it was like 10 of them, and they kept cheering for us when we were down 10-2, and like they did not stop. We ended up winning that game 12-10. Like they just got us going. I can't explain it.
That's undeniable proof right there.
Yep. At all levels of hockey, if you have Finns in the stands cheering you on, you're going to do all right.
Exactly. Christian asking, does CBC broadcast the World Juniors in Canada? I believe the rights holder is TSN for that. I'm like 99% sure about that. And then it's NHL Network in the States, which is a bummer.
Cool.
Still. Yeah, I know. Jenna, I know McCann had a goal tonight, which I attribute mostly to Shane's awesome passes, but he has not looked good. He got in Dunn's way, leading to the first empty net goal. Frustrating stuff. I did feel like Jared McCann looked more like Jared McCann in the offensive zone in this one, RJ, because he wasn't feeling like he had to kind of be the forechecker. It felt like, again, that line just looked like they were capable of playing more like a traditional skill line rather than a line trying to, emulate what's been kind of working for this group in the system that they've been running. I think it's one where you just got to give him a little bit of time playing like that, and we'll see him kind of back to what he was. And as much credit as I think both Shane and Yanni deserve for that goal, that's still a finish that on this team only a handful of guys are making, and Jared McCann's definitely one of them.
Right. And I'm going back to look at the video of the finish, because on it, because he doesn't shoot it right away. He kind of pulls it a little bit so he can get extra power and put it to the top of the net. Those are the details of a 40 goal scorer, where they can put the shot in the right location. I think a lot of guys would one time that right into Blackwood's pads.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Rachel, the poor beer hall is going to start featuring some interesting specials: tank turkey leg, failed goalie pulled pork, and no Gatorade in sight. No. I know the Gatorade drought, as somebody put it earlier, it has been rough, RJ. It has been rough.
Have you drank anything the last week or so?
Yes, I have been drinking things. I am not
just not Gatorade.
on the brink of death from dehydration, but I have not been enjoying Gatorade. That is for sure.
I get that could be one way to motivate the team, right? Dylan's only going to drink lemon lime Gatorade for the night. Well, maybe when they come back from the break.
Yeah,
you guys win.
Yeah. Terrible Lotus asking a question. How long did it generally take pre-Vegas expansion teams to get going? Didn't it take some a very long time? Yes, it was a pretty brutal process, not gonna lie. Expansion pre the Vegas Golden Knights era.
Yeah, definitely. And it would take teams a long time. I mean, some teams, like you look at Columbus, haven't ever really built something, that is a proper contender. But the reason for that is the expansion rules were very, very different before Vegas. I mean, teams, I think, we know the 7-3 protection for those who remember the expansion draft for the Kraken, same rules for Vegas. You can protect 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie. I believe it was something like 10 forwards, 5 defensemen, and 2 goalies or something that teams could protect in those earlier years. So you were getting players that were not really even of NHL level, or that were fourth liners and no better than that in the expansion process. There was no talent. You were starting from absolute scratch. Very different Vegas and Seattle's process, where they were able to create teams. I mean, Vegas was kind of an anomaly with going to the Cup final in year 1, but the Kraken were still a playoff team in year 2. And
Yeah.
so they did have some real NHL level talent, guys like a Vince Dunn, Adam Larson, Yanni Gord. I mean, name like anyone, Jared McCann.
Yeah.
They would not have been available under the old format.
No, not at all. You would have had zero chance at getting anybody like that. You knew like the first 5 years of that franchise was just going to be brutal. Like that was just the way it was, and you were just going to have to draft your way out of it and hope that all of those draft picks hit, because if they didn't, it was just going to continue to be brutal even longer. It was a really rough situation there. And Jenna's saying, yeah, Vegas having instant success really skewed expectations. Most expansion teams are awful for a while. I think, it's reasonable to have some higher expectations over a traditional expansion franchise because the system the Kraken came into was different, but also kind of from day one, Seattle did take a different approach to Vegas. They want, Ron Francis has always talked about it being a little bit more of a slow burn of a process. He wanted to build up the organization over a handful of years rather than come in and really try to maximize everything year one, hit the ground running and all of that kind of stuff. So we are seeing that process. We could debate whether or not it has been working and whether or not the slow burn moves were always the correct moves. I think that's fair, but that is a different discussion. They did try to set expectations differently from Vegas, literally at the expansion draft.
Yes. No, they were trying to get ahead of it for sure.
Yeah. Sean saying, I think we'll start seeing Shane with way more minutes. We need to start seeing primarily the very few long-term players the most. I do think that shift is coming, RJ. Like we will see that down the stretch, just because as an organization in this situation, you kind of have to, right? Like that is the thing that you've got to do. It'll be interesting though to see when they actually do it. Right? Like, was tonight an anomaly? How much do we start shifting things? If Shane Wright's going to continue to play with a Jared McCann, does that just mean more elevated ice time?
And I'm hoping we've seen the start of it tonight. Looking at those lines at the start of the game, that's what it looked like. But it makes sense as a logical plan, right? You talked about it on the last post game where, okay, Shane's confidence is shot. He's not playing well, right? As before the reset, you scratch him a few games, you reset everything, and you bring him back and you let him just go to town against lower end competition and just build that confidence up and score. That part has been done. It's been 13, 14 games, and he's near a point per game player in those spots. At some point, the next stage has to be, okay, you up the challenge a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing these reps, you got to up the weight. And so I think we're going to see that at some point. It's just a matter of when. And I think the more the team loses in the short term, the faster that timeline probably gets pushed up.
Definitely. And I plan on talking about some of that stuff, like specifically with the different young guys on the deep dive. That is something there. Daniel saying, in my mind, on paper, Ron Francis is the best GM for this team. Well, maybe he's not. But any other GMs that you hear about are the Lou Lamarillos of the world. Could you guys discuss candidates on a deep dive? Maybe not always specific candidates, but certainly like the ideas that we would maybe look for in a GM for this group and for a team that is in the situation that they're in.
Yeah, and I think as far as discussing GM candidates, I almost, at least for now, I kind of want to treat it like we did the coaching search, right, for the next coach. As long as Hackstall still had a job, we weren't really talking about next coaches. And GMs are even harder because it's a whole different category of people that you look at. And you might even want to go with, I think the way to go might be going with an assistant GM from a team that's had a lot of success. And so those guys can be, they won't be the retreads that you necessarily see, right? It might be someone who's never been a GM before. And so that's going to take a little bit more time and research, but I think we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Exactly. Sorry. Sean, love this community, and I'm happy that we'll be here for each other every game, regardless of where this is headed. I agree, Sean, and thanks you for throwing that in there. And I do see lots of people kind of sharing that sentiment, and it is nice to see all of that in here. Mark, I think we have a better team this year with the addition of Montour and Stevenson, yet it isn't showing on the ice. It seems coaching has to take some responsibility. And I've seen this, we've talked about it the last couple of post games. I was going to address it tomorrow on the deep dive, but this is not the first time that I've kind of seen this in the post game. I will again, I feel like a broken record, and I'm sure that there's some people out there that are kind of tired of hearing this. But you just made a coaching change with the vast majority of this roster being the same, and you're seeing the same issues with consistency, style of play, guys not, doing those little things that they should be doing out there on the ice. I really think that it is not a coaching issue at that point. Like, you have removed that variable. It's either roster construction or the players themselves.
And as far as the case about the roster being better, I don't know that that's really been the case to a significant enough degree this season, because yes, you have Montour and Stevenson. We've talked about it. I think Stevenson is a downgrade from Alex Wenberg. He does some things better, but I think the overall impact is worse. And then Brandon Montour, obviously he's helped. He's been fantastic. We've talked about it, right? But you were missing Vince Dunn for so much of this season to this point. Montour, for that large stretch, basically filled in the Vince Dunn sized hole in the lineup. And so they've only had the two of them together for a limited amount of time. I think overall, it's just about the same level of skill in this group.
Yeah, I feel like he's an upgrade over what you would have had getting second pairing minutes last year. Like Will Borgen, right?
For sure. I mean, with Vince Dunn out,
but
which has been the majority of the season.
Yeah. Let's see. But yeah, I just think, it can't be the coach. If you just changed coaches, you found somebody who coaches very differently already too. It's not even like it's not even like you got rid of the coach, but you promoted an assistant, and the overall culture and everything remains the same. I mean, this organization really did do like a deep cleaning culture wise to try to make everything very different, change the mindset of everybody around and the way everything operated beyond just the coaching staff. And I feel like that change means you kind of have to remove it as the excuse or reason for the play being the way it has been.
Yeah, agreed.
Sean asking, do you think that Edzo has just had enough in general? I mean, he does not strike me as the type of guy to take a lot of nonsense, and this team has driven a lot of us crazy. Why not Eddie? That would be impossible to really speak to, but yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm just guessing here, but I mean, I think we can just see it on the broadcast. In a word, yes, he doesn't have a lot of time and a lot of tolerance for these sorts of mistakes, and especially the things mentally that a hockey team will do when he watches them consistently. He knows they've got better in them. He knows they can be more consistent. And I think, like a lot of us, he's just reacting like a lot of us are. And I think that's one of the things that a good broadcaster on a local broadcast should do and should be good at doing, is kind of, channeling what a lot of the fans, I'm sure, are thinking of just, what's going on here.
Right. And I think
maybe not necessarily with the face-off stuff, but in general.
Yeah. I think also, as somebody who did have a very long and successful career as a player, somebody who was a Stanley Cup champion, and then somebody who was a coach, right, to various degrees of success, but he was an NHL coach. I think there's also a level of seeing a lot of these things and almost feeling powerless in your ability to go in and really get your hands dirty and address those, because you're not the player anymore. You don't have that ability to put the work in and make that change if you want to. You're not the head coach anymore. You don't have that ability to go to that player and make them put in the work and come out the other side differently. And I got to imagine, as somebody who was in both of those roles previously, that's got to be really difficult.
Yeah, and the kind of player that Eddie was too. Somebody so competitive and so, he sees so much, right? I'm sure as a player, right, he'd be the first guy who's standing up yelling like, come on, and be leading by example too, and trying to get those details right and everything. And it can feel, I think powerless is the perfect word that you used, right? When you don't get to be the guy on the ice out on the ice anymore. When you used to be, and what that was like, it's tough.
Yeah. Sorry, this got me. Christian, I don't think they have enough cap space to buy consistency. Fair. Good rebuttal. Chuck, can you remember seeing a goal like Kakko's before, shooting between the linesman's legs and essentially using him as a screen? I don't know about specifically utilizing the linesman like that. I mean, I've seen guys off of a face-off just basically shoot the puck, like win the face-off by shooting the puck and it going in. But I don't know about, the winger kind of coming from behind the linesman like that.
Yeah, I agree. That specifically, I can't recall a specific example, but there are a lot of quick goals off faceoffs, but to get the heads up play by Kaapo Kakko, you use whatever you can, right? And that element of surprise is just so important, especially against NHL goalies, where if they can square up and see it, they're probably going to stop it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amanda, on a funny note, my friend is in Vegas and didn't realize the Kraken were there yesterday and said in an elevator, wow, he looks like Vince Dunn. And it was, in fact, Vince Dunn.
Wow. Funny.
that is perfect. That's absolutely perfect.
And then we got
Um,
super chat here from Light. Hey, Edzo got the Penguins Malkin. He deserves hype.
That is true. That is true. And I will say, if you do like enjoy Eddie Olczyk, particularly when he's more in like storyteller mode, one of the cool things out there is if you have like audibles through Amazon, there is a Sidney Crosby kind of it's like a book, but really it's like a series of interviews and everybody kind of talking about Sidney Crosby's journey. And Eddie Olczyk is in there from his time with the Penguins as coach and everything, talking about stuff. And I thought he was really good in that. And really everybody's really good in it. And I recommend it as just a hockey thing to listen to. And especially if you're a newer fan that doesn't always have context for like Sid the Kid and how impactful and meaningful he was to the NHL staying alive 15 years ago. It's a good one. Or
Yeah,
20
get
years
the new
ago.
generation in on the pro Crosby propaganda. Go ahead, Dylan.
Oh, they're all going to see Ovi break the goals record. Okay. I got to do something.
Okay, okay.
In the 20-year battle between the two. Let's
Can you tell
see.
which side either of us were on in
Yeah,
that
really.
time in our formative years?
We do such a good job of hiding it. Looking at stuff, Christian Ron Francis's slow burn strategy, yet having the expectations of being a playoff team year one is confusing me now after following the Kraken for 4 years. I mean, it was one of those where no matter what Ron, because I remember this and I remember kind of talking about this in our like ECH infancy, but it was like no matter every single of those early press conferences, whether it was at the expansion draft, right after free agency when he signed Philip Grubauer and Jaden Schwartz, at the coach hiring, Hackstall press conference, Ron Francis was always trying to tamp down expectations and nobody wanted to hear it ever.
Yep, I remember that very well. Every time he talked, he would mention Vegas and how not everyone's going to be Vegas, and this is a different team, a different system, a different setup. I think some of the moves that he made, like the Grubauer, Schwartz, Wemberg, all those signings, hint that he wanted to be somewhat competitive. This was not a team that was trying to bottom out right away year one. They wanted to be somewhat competitive, but yeah, he was always trying to get the expectations lower.
Yeah. Duthan, how are you feeling about the Borgen Kako trade now that we're a couple of games in?
I feel pretty much the same because I feel like Kako has been largely as advertised, and
Mhm.
I'll write off the first few games because he hasn't practiced with the team yet, even now. So I don't even want to make too many takeaways after this game with him. But I think we're seeing the flashes and the potential he could bring. I think he has the chance and probably will bring more to this team than Will Borgen was doing at least this season. I haven't watched any of Borgen with the Rangers, so I don't know how he's been playing, but I feel like I've got a pretty good read on just the type of player he is from how much we've seen him.
Yeah, I think it's still you traded for somebody that is going to do the things you needed somebody to do out there on the ice, and you gave up somebody that was, your sixth or seventh defenseman for a guy that you're going to install in your top six to help get one of your young developing franchise centermen going. I feel like you make that trade every day of the week, regardless of what like the actual numbers and production are. Just from that standpoint, you have to do it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, trade or not, Will Borgen was not going to be on this team next year. And so you look at it from next year's perspective, you have a player that you wouldn't have otherwise had.
Yeah. Terrible Lotus. Didn't one of you say that it also takes a year or two for a coach to really blossom with a team, for a weird metaphor unrelated to hockey? No, it does take a little while for things to get going. Obviously, from a system standpoint, we talked about this a lot. Dan talked about it as far as that 20 games to build the habits and get guys comfortable in the system so they're not really thinking about it. They can just go. But as far as, building the overall philosophy, building on top of the basic building blocks of a system that you're going to have. How many times can I say building? As far as doing all of that stuff, creating, generating, culture, relationships with the players, the ability just to, especially with a coach like Dan, who does want to have a one-on-one personal connection with his players, it takes time to communicate with all those guys and try different things to get them going on an individual by individual basis. It is one of those things where I do feel like if it's a mid-season hiring, you will see that new coach bump. But as far as like the better franchises, RJ, the better coaches in the NHL, it is one of those things where year two has to build on top of year one, and then year three builds on top of year two, and so on.
Right. There are layers that you can build within your systems, within everything that you do. And it's kind of like players coming together and building chemistry as well, right? There's just that level of communication with the group. You get that coach bump right away when it's issues of, like, say, motivation. That's a different thing. And you will see that right away. That can change
Yeah.
very fast. But as far as the actual X's and O's and systems, it takes time.
Right. Or if there was going to be a diagnosing and then addressing of like an overall consistency issue, it probably takes time. Seems like a
Yep.
complicated issue to me, just from the outside. I'm sure it's something that he's aware of and he would like to change. And it's just, that's not something that you just like can flip a switch for as a head coach, as much as I'm sure all the head coaches would love to be able to do that.
That'd be a fun just switch to be able to flip.
I would love to do an anonymous survey of NHL head coaches where you just ask them one question. If you could, would you flip a switch come game time that just shuts your players' brains off and then they just play exactly what you tell them to do? How many coaches would say yes?
Probably all of them.
I
And
think
it might not always be
would.
And it might not always be there. Like, actually, you know what? Like something like Marty St. Louis, maybe he wouldn't. I think some of
Yeah.
the newer coaches might not say
That's
that.
what I was thinking. I think there's some guys that recognize that creativity and stuff does play a role in it. I think a Jared Bednar would probably not say so. He'd be like, no, I kind of want
Given the
Kale
horses
McCarr
he
and
has,
Nathan
yeah.
McKinnon to make plays actually. But it would be an interesting thing. Let's see. Christian, is the Sidney Crosby the Rookie of the Year audiobook? I will look that up. So let me ask a question to RJ here first. Schultz, it'll be good for the Kraken to get a practice in rather than line blender on the fly. They seem to have had a lot of games every other day with back-to-backs. I can't imagine it's easy to fix things at a morning skate. I do think that's part of the issue here.
Yeah, I agree. And it's tough scheduling, right? So you don't have a practice really in there anyway. And it is harder to fix things at a morning skate because really a morning skate isn't for that. Dan Bilesman talked about it earlier this season. Really, a morning skate is for each player individually to go in there and get what they need. Occasionally you can work on, like, if you have a new power play unit, just work on passing things together or whatever. But it's really not about tuning those group dynamics. It's about the individual players going through their routines. So it's really not what it's for. And the Kraken, with the holiday break now too, it starts tomorrow. They don't have a whole lot of time until they get back. So they're going to need to take advantage of that limited time that they have as soon as they return.
Yeah. Christian, yes, it is Sidney Crosby, the Rookie Year is the title of it there. And then Daniel, don't know why it's so hard for this team to rely on its systems and structures. I fix irrigation systems. If I'm having a tough time at work, I fall back on our processes and systems. And yeah, I think that's just one of the again, right? It's like the consistency thing. It's just one of those weird questions that it feels like we're asking ourselves another year later. And again, I don't know that we can ever truly have an answer for it.
And it's not like they don't know they need to do that. Listen to Yanni Gordon, that first intermission interview, right? He said, we need to get back to what we do. We need to just chip in pucks deep and go to work. And the coaches will say that. The players will say that. They know what they need to do. It's just not being done.
Exactly. So we will see if they're able to do it, RJ, and if they're able to reset a little during this next break. But I think we could leave it on this super chat here from Ben. Hey, guys, first-time commentator, long-time listener, checking in from Australia. I'm usually a few hours behind, but I'm here riding the waves with you all. Well, thank you very much, Ben, for speaking up for the first time. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the support. Appreciate the super chat. And yeah, you're not alone, by the way, in checking in from Australia.
Yeah, we have several Aussie viewers, listeners, and I think there's a couple Kiwis as well from that side of the world. So appreciate that, Ben. So cool to see that. People from all over who are joining us here on Post Game. I'm trying to do the quick math in my head to see what time it is for you roughly, but I can't do the quick math fast enough. But hope you're having a good, middle of the day probably?
Yeah.
Early afternoon, late
Getting
morning?
in there. Yeah. No, it's good stuff. Want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. All the people who gave super chats. Want to wish a happy holidays to everybody. And of course, thank Queen Anne Beer Hall one more time. I might need some of that beer hall pretzel magic, maybe when I go and check my my fantasy game here after we're done with this. So everybody cross your fingers the way they cross their pretzel dough. How's that?
There we go. That's a better slogan than it's not their fault.
It's not their fault. Yeah. Glad I could improve upon my rock bottom approach to the beginning of the podcast. Thanks everybody so much for listening and for all your continued support. Have a happy holidays, and we will see you all next time.